And staying with the war in Ukraine, Russia has suffered a high number of casualties since its troops invaded. So the Kremlin has responded with the launch of an extensive campaign to recruit volunteers to fight on TV, social media and billboards. They've promised huge sums of money and other perks, but many are given little or no training and are sent straight to the front line. Will Vernon reports from Moscow.
The Kremlin tells Russians their soldiers are heroes. Professional, well-trained troops fighting in Ukraine. But Western officials say that Russia's running out of men. 70 to 80,000 killed or wounded. The solution? Signing up volunteers. Yevgeny was one of those who joined up. His mother, Nina, says that her son was given a gun and sent straight into Ukraine. Days later, he was killed.
They just send them in, like dumb little chickens. They'd hardly even held a gun before. They're cannon fodder. The generals think, we've got a volunteer, great, in you go.
In these videos, volunteers are promised huge sums of money and even plots of land. They're now a common sight on social media. But recruiting is being done in more traditional ways too.
This announcement talks about the creation of 2 new volunteer brigades. It's urging local people here to sign up to fight in Ukraine. And this is a message that's being repeated right across the country. On TV, on social media, on billboards. It's a large-scale recruitment campaign for the Russian army.
We should bomb them. I'd give them what for, this man said. If I were young, I'd go. It's too painful to talk about, this lady told me. Why go? Only their bodies will be brought back. But can Russia win this war with a volunteer army?
So this is, I think, not the type of the soldiers that are needed to a victorious war. The main problem is not with the quantity of people, but with the qualities, with their motivation. This is not a thing that you can change quickly. You can't bring, I don't know, thousands of people and to teach them how to work with modern weapons, tanks and aircrafts.
The Russian military has not released casualty figures since the end of March. But Nina knows that large numbers are dying in Ukraine.
You read the news and it's all about men being killed. But people are going there. I don't know why they go.
President Putin says he ordered his forces into Ukraine to protect his people. But the Kremlin is now sending even more Russians there, into mortal danger. Will Vernon, BBC News, Moscow.
In the past hour or so, the UK's Ministry of Defence has released its latest intelligence update in which it states that Russia is likely increasingly struggling to motivate the auxiliary forces it's using to augment its regular troops in the Donbass. Commanders are probably resorting to direct financial incentives, while some combat units are deemed unreliable for offensive operations. A consistent contributing factor to these problems is Russia's classification of the war as a special military operation, which limits the state's powers of legal coercion. Well, joining me now is military and security expert Professor Paul Moorcroft. What do you make of what you've just heard there in Will Vernon's report and from the MOD?
Well, first of all, the MOD, as Churchill said, there's one thing worse than fighting with allies, and that's fighting without them. The Russians are using typical strategies of using auxiliary forces. It is odd that the 2 republics forces in the Donbass are playing up. I would like some more detail. Not that I'm doubting my former ministry's information, but I'm a little bit skeptical. And also, the other point about why is Putin so proud that he won't declare a national emergency, and which will allow him to use some of the conscript and reserves and so on. because all the other tactics have failed. They've been using allegedly up to 20,000, that's figures too inflated in my view, volunteers from Syria and Libya. As one intelligence official said, sending Syrians to fight in Ukraine is like sending Martians to fight on the moon. So it does show the desperation of the Russians. It's the same old problem. Although there's been some modernization under Putin, the armed forces still have the same problems of command and control, coordination, the leadership quality of officers. There's so many problems in the Russian forces. On the other hand, they're quite resilient, as they showed in the Second World War. So we shouldn't emphasize too much the Russians are being too demoralized, too weak after 6 months of fighting.
And just to explain, though, because with your military background, what it's like when people who aren't trained at all come in to fight alongside those who are. What impact does it have on those who are already there?
Well, it's extremely demoralizing. It's like there used to be calls in Britain for conscription. And of course, we've got an all-regular volunteer army, although we use other forces as well, like Gurkhas. There's nothing worse than a well-motivated, trained, disciplined group of soldiers suddenly have a bunch of people fighting alongside them. Certainly that was my experience in, for example, Afghanistan in the 80s against the Russians. The Afghan forces believed their own propaganda and thought they were great troops. And they were completely useless. So spending time in battle with them was extremely unnerving, because I was with professional soldiers who knew what they were doing. The Afghans prayed a lot, had a lot of courage, but they were just not trained. And in essence, in any war, at any time, a good soldier is a trained soldier, but he also has to be motivated. And that's what the Ukrainians have. They've got some good training, got good equipment. They've got a lot more instructors from the West than the West is prepared to admit. And they're fighting for their homeland. The Russian forces seem demoralized, seem disorganized. They have a lot of problems with command and control, as I said. So this war is likely to go on for a long time, because the Russians are bigger and more powerful and the Ukrainians are fighting better. So that's a recipe, not for stalemate, but for a long, long war.
OK. Well, good to get your thoughts. Thank you very much. That's Paul Moorcraft there. Thank you.